Welcome In Touch with Indiana Sports, powered by the Hoosier.com of the On3 Sports Network. John Alden with you as always. Welcome back to the show and happy August. It's finally August, which just means we're one step closer to the beginning of the next college athletics season. And of course, one of my personal favorite times of the year, football season. And last year that was made so much more enjoyable by the success of the Indiana Hoosiers, and I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing that replicated in some way, shape, or form this upcoming season. And literally this month, we will have college football action beginning with week 0 here in just a few weeks, and then everything really gets ramped up with week 1 on August 30th. That's when the Hoosiers will finally take the field for the first time against Old Dominion. So I'm excited to take all of that in, and hopefully we'll get around to seeing a game in person this year. Also, I'm just looking forward to, I think I might have teased this, or not really teased it, but mentioned it last week. On week 0 last year, I kind of did a practice parlay. I'm big into college football betting. I haven't done any betting since a little bit of the NBA playoffs. I didn't do the entirety of the playoffs. I just did a little bit of it. But I haven't done any sports betting since then. I'm ready to get that ramped up once again. And last year, I did a practice parlay, if that's what I'm, I guess, calling it now, meaning I put together what I would have bet and deeply regretted it because all 4 legs hit, and therefore would have been a nice little cash in. And, that was a lesson learned right there, to never do a mock parlay, if you will, and just if you have picks, just make them. And that's exactly what we're going to do when we get to week 0. Haven't really done much looking into the spreads and all that sort of thing just yet. I don't even know if they have spreads out for those games. I'm sure they do, certain sports books, but we'll wait. We'll save those for when we get to the week of week 0, of course. Hope you guys are enjoying yourselves. Hope you guys are enjoying the back half of your summer. Some of you may have children about ready to go back to school. I'm sure some of you, and maybe some of you already have kids back in school. I learned that Southern Indiana, their school started back in late July last week. So if you're one of those people, then shout out to you, I guess. Good luck with the school year, and good luck with the children heading back to school. And if you're about to be in that same boat, then I wish you the best of luck as well. My wife, being a teacher, she's looking forward to getting things rolling here on, I believe it's August 11th or 12th. So she's got one more week to kind of get things ready to roll. But she's been off for nearly 4 months now with the baby. So she's itching to go back, but I know she's also going to miss all the time that she has had with our firstborn daughter. And I've, of course, enjoyed them being home as well. And but we're also both just looking forward to routine again. And I've been able to kind of get back in my own routine, but I'm ready to see what life is going to be like with everything kind of back to normal, what the new normal is for us, right? So, but I won't talk too much more about that. I know not everybody is invested with what's going on in my personal life, as you shouldn't be, or if you don't want to be, I don't blame you, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You're here for a sports show, and that's what we're here to talk about, some Indiana Hoosier sports. And we don't always talk Hoosiers. We did talk a lot about the Pacers this past summer, especially with all that they did in the playoffs, getting to the finals and everything. But we've also got the NFL coming up. I'm getting excited to do my second season of fantasy football. Did fairly well last year. Didn't win my league, but I did well enough to get me to come back. So looking forward to doing another edition of that, and hoping that the Colts can maybe find some signs of life. We'll have to find some time to really do a deep dive into the NFL before we get the season rolling. Of course, we don't talk nearly as much about it as we do college football. But if the Colts can make some more noise this year, as opposed to what they've done in recent seasons, and they give us a reason to talk about them more, then we'll most certainly talk more about the Colts. We'll talk about the NFL in general, especially when there's big stories going around. And like I said, hopefully the Colts will get some things figured out Anthony Richardson, is he the answer? He kind of, there were times where he seemed like he showed some flashes of ability, if you will, but I think a lot of people are ready to see things kind of change over. Of course, you no longer have Jim Irsay, God rest his soul, but the ownership still in the family. So it'll be interesting to see how things play out with the franchise this season, and if they're going to end up having to go in a different direction in a number of ways. So we'll have to see what happens there. But we're going to have a lengthy conversation here in just a couple of minutes with our friend Mitchell Paige about the upcoming Indiana football season. Looking forward to having him on the show much more frequently once we get into the season. Next time you see him after today, of course, on this show will likely be either the week before the season starts or the week after the first game, I would imagine. Then I'm hoping to have him on every week during the football season. And last year that was a heck of a good time, and it was also very cool, just from my perspective, to see somebody like him who has become a friend of mine, who has also been through the program, of course, and seen all of the ups and downs. And I'm sure it's a unique experience for somebody like him and anybody who's been a former Indiana player to see the program take the step that they took last year, and hopefully we'll continue to take steps forward as the seasons go along with Curt Cignetti. Also want to check in with Derek Jackson once again, someone from the Bill Mallory era. Haven't chatted with him in quite some time, so we may check in with him here within the next few weeks, as well as we get closer to the kickoff of the next Indiana football season. So we'll go ahead and get into that conversation here in just a moment. But before we do that, I want to tell you real quick about Rhoback Activewear. There's only one way to describe Rhoback: best fit, best feel. For those who aren't familiar with Rhoback, they are completely changing the game with their incredibly comfortable activewear. Rhoback has released so many items within their new licensed game day collection, and it's our favorite as well, with novel polo designs and clean hoodie and Q-zip designs for some of your favorite schools. Of course, us being the Indiana Hoosiers, it's definitely worth checking out. Nobody else on the market is pairing these level of custom designs with this quality of activewear. Rhoback's everyday shorts or their Delta performance pants are the perfect pairing as well. They are both super comfortable, have an elastic waistband, and great fabric that is made to have the appearance of a nice short look, but the comfort for a day on the move. Rhoback has also been proudly leading the NIL charge, having signed partnerships with multiple college football stars, past and present, and are becoming the go-to brand for college athletes across the country. For you, Indiana fans, use the code IND20, that's 20, on Rhoback.com for a 20% off discount for all new customers through the end of this week. That's spelled RHOBACK.com for 20% off. Use the code IND20. Joining us once again on In Touch with Indiana Sports, just in time for a brand new football season, it is former Indiana Hoosiers wide receiver Mitchell Paige and his lovely daughter, Maggie Paige, joining the stream today. Welcome back to In Touch with Indiana Sports.
Cannot wait. Football season is here. Maggie's excited, isn't that right? Can you give me an or something? She will. She's going to be...
But Maggie doesn't know, and she'll eventually hear the tales when she gets older, is that she was kind of seen as the good luck charm for Indiana football last year.
Yeah. She's lost twice in her illustrious career.
She doesn't know what losing is.
2 tough losses, but she's going to be in the stadium for the first time this year. Very excited. Probably going to the first game. We'll see how long she lasts. I'm hoping for a quarter.
Well, we'll see. Anyway, yeah. It's super exciting, and I keep going back to this. I think you and I probably talked about this before. We're not going into a season where there's hope, kind of like there was in 2021 after the anomaly of the 2020 Tom Allen year that was moderately successful. This is something totally different where there's expectation to not only sustain, but exceed that, as Cignetti's been talking about. Of course, there's a lot of different things to replace, but what are you most excited about in year 2, just off the top?
Yeah, it's got to be the quarterback. Heard a lot of really awesome things everything that I've heard from inside spring practice, inside fall camp up to now is he can make a ton of plays with his legs, which when you look at a lot of the most high-powered offenses over the last however many years, the quarterback's able to escape and create, and Curtis Rourke was so accurate with his arm, tough, being able to stand in to deliver throws, but understandably, when you're playing with only one working ACL, wasn't the most mobile in the country, and he was still so effective in that offense. So adding another element of a mobile quarterback that when things do break down, he can escape. You've got a lot of guys on the outside. I know, I agree. You got a lot of guys on the outside that can make things happen and extend plays. I'm an offensive guy, so I'm excited for the offense. The quarterback in college football makes you go. So everything I'm hearing is good. I can't wait to watch him.
I think a lot of people, after you've had one successful player like Curtis Rourke and somebody comes in to fill those shoes and are, expected to take over and potentially be better, that's kind of the cliche that I feel like I've heard the most. And I don't know if I fully buy into. I'm not saying that he can't live up to those expectations, but hearing people say that he might be an upgrade from Curtis Rourke after last year, I think any Indiana fan would be hard pressed to believe that that without any sort of reservation that maybe there would be some cautious optimism with that,
right? Yeah, Maggie, we're trying to do something here. I'm gonna put her down here, and then she's probably gonna cry, and we may have to cut this out.
Yeah. If we've got to chop it up a little bit, that's okay.
Here you go.
This is just dad life.
This is dad life. You're starting to learn. You're getting there. I know. Hey, can you play with this? Here. That's Dad's old nasty golf glove. You can have this.
If any of you listening right now are not fathers yet or parents, and you are aspiring to be a dad, this is something you have to look forward to.
This is it. She's 1 in, I guess, a little over a month, so 13 months old. She can move around, and all she wants to do is be around us, be held, have us chase her. That's all that we do constantly. I'm sweating right now from chasing her for the last 2 hours. But to get back to football, it's almost, everybody, I know there is a lot of optimism. I just was optimistic about him, but I have a little place in me that's kind of like, no way he's going to be better than Curtis Rourke. That's such a high bar to hold him to. We don't need him to be as good as Curtis Rourke. I think Curtis Rourke was, when we look back 10 years from now, one of the best players that Indiana's maybe ever had, just in terms of toughness and being able to deliver in big moments and keep us on track. Even I think about the Maryland game when he starts shaky and his ability to just reset and gather and still just continue to churn the way they churned in every other game. Mendoza's got big shoes to fill. He does bring a little added dynamic, but we don't need him to win the Heisman Trophy. Maybe be in the conversation if we want to talk national championship, but for us to take another step forward, we don't need him to be a world beater. And hopefully as the season goes on, he'll start to understand how good the players are around him and just do what he needs to do. You talk about the word expectation. It's a weird feeling to have expectations going into a season. But they're definitely there, and they're extremely high. But I think that's what makes it fun. And it seems like when you listen to him talk at media days, you listen to Cignetti, there was almost a mental reset for them in a way that maybe the fan base didn't have that, where they kind of start from ground one. And now I'm just spewing because I'm so excited college football's here. But I heard Aiden Fisher talk about some of the young guys, some of the transfer guys, when they first got there in the fall or in the winter, maybe thought they were a little bigger than the program. And for whatever reason, hearing him acknowledge that, and as early as they realize that, to be able to reset a lot of those guys that are probably going to be key pieces of the program, just speaks to the kind of leaders that you have on the team. And I think that's why the expectations are what they are. You got so many returning players that had such a big impact. That's what it takes to build a program and not be a one-hit wonder.
The national narrative surrounding Indiana football was fairly negative for the most part, especially depending on what network you were listening to. Fox, of course, a little more Big Ten leaning, so you did get a little more Indiana positivity from guys like Joel Klatt and the like. But the big wigs, or not necessarily the big wigs, but the big names of the ESPN never really like to give Indiana much love, and that's continued into this offseason as you get ready for 2025. Do you think it's just, I hate to call it this, but ESPN propaganda that wants to kind of deflate the young, growing Indiana program? Or, I mean, it's just jealousy? What do you think is the root of all of the outside national negativity?
I think it's interesting. They're talking about Indiana. That's what I see from it. Like, if I want to get some Indiana coverage, it's like everybody else. I go to somebody that I know is going to say Indiana's the best team ever. So I don't read. I saw something from Heather Dinich, and I just got quote tweeted a bunch of times on my Twitter, but I didn't read it. My guess is I probably am similar to the players in that go win your games. Who cares? You've got so much to play for this year. Heather Dinich has to do something for content. All these guys we're at fall camp, but coaches are just giving vanilla answers. You don't really have anything to talk about. Everybody but Signetti, I suppose. They're just trying to fill space. Just shut the heck up and let's go play. That's kind of the way that I feel. You can only beat the teams on your schedule.
So speaking of schedule, of course, a lot of the negative noise having to do with, of course, the scheduling decision to move teams or remove teams like Virginia from future non-conference schedules. I think the reasoning of all of it makes sense. And of course, now you've seen other programs like Arkansas remove, I don't know if it was like North Alabama or no, it was Charleston Southern to add North Alabama. So Indiana's not the only school. And by the way, I don't even know how big of a difference Charleston Southern is from a North Alabama, considering I think they're both at the FCS level. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But either way, your thoughts on the decision to kind of move away from playing other P4 non-con opponents, except for, of course, Notre Dame, which is still currently on the schedule a few years down the line. Do you think that's a good move, big picture? Do you see why they're doing it? How do you like to see non-conference schedules put together?
Yeah, if you don't understand it, I just think that you're blind. It's clearly designed in the way that the current college football playoff needs your schedule to be designed. You play enough really good teams throughout the year. You have to just check boxes at the beginning of the season. That's just the reality. As a fan, do I want to see them play really good teams? Of course. So as a fan, do I like it? No. I want to watch them go to Virginia and smash them. That's what I want to see. But why? From the program's perspective, what's the reason for that? And I would have a hard time.
Because here's the thing. I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're good.
Beating Virginia doesn't do anything for you, but losing to them can ruin your chances at anything.
Destroys your season. It's like a neutral lose situation.
Yeah.
Winning does nothing. Losing destroys everything. So it's just not worth the risk. Do I think that if in their current state, Indiana beats Virginia 49 times out of 50? Probably. But why? You're not incentivized to even take that risk. The Indiana played whoever they played last year, smashed them, beat teams. You don't even talk about those first three games.
Yeah. Last year, they replaced Louisville with Western Illinois, I believe. Of course, that was the game that Indiana won, like 77-3, something like that.
They smashed
of course, Louisville, a really good team that was bought. That series was removed during the end of Tom Allen's tenure, of course, for different reasons. Indiana was trying just to get to a bowl game during those times. And that's a Louisville program, of course, now led by Jeff Brom, that if Signetti's playing at Louisville in game 2 last year, there's probably a good chance that Indiana still could have and maybe would have won that game. But Louisville also a good enough team that could have easily ruined your college football playoff hopes in the second game of the season.
Yeah, and I think more so than, no one in week 2 was thinking college football playoff. So
No.
It's really easy for a program that had the seasons they had. You still have some guys from those teams, not a ton, but some, to go to Louisville, get beat. You're still trying to learn the system. You're still trying to learn how to win, learn how to believe. It can not only ruin college football playoff hopes, but you can really shake confidence in a lot of players to not play at the level that we obviously saw they were capable of. And it's in game 2. So it's a brand new season, brand new coach, brand new program. I just don't see the risk. Even if this was Cignetti's 10th year, from a program perspective, the way that things are, the way they're built, the way that they are, there's just no incentive. It sucks for fans, but that's just the reality.
Now, looking at what's actually on the schedule this year, I'm not necessarily talking about the Old Dominions and the Kennesaw States and the Indiana States, but kind of a couple of questions. First of all, really big game in week 4 with Illinois, already sold out. 2 teams that are kind of seen as the dark horse brands of the Big Ten this year. Of course, Indiana once again, now Illinois taking a big jump up due to a lot of returning personnel that they have. Is that your standout conference game for like how the season could go, or what else do you like on the schedule this year?
Standout game for how the season could go? Maybe not. I think I'm comparing us to teams like Oregon and Penn State currently. And that's not like if we win, we're going to have a great year. If we lose, we're going to have a bad year type games. But I think that's the standard that the players are trying to play to. So those are the teams that I look at as kind of the bar for us. If we get beat up a little bit the way that we did at Ohio State and Notre Dame, we still got a long way to go. Illinois is a really, really good team, but that should not be the bar if we want to get to where we're going. They're phenomenal. I think they have a really good chance to win a lot of games. But I think that if that's our bar, we're shooting too low.
Hey, I like the way that you think about that, because right after that, you have a stretch that includes Iowa on the road. You do have a bye week after that. You go back on the road to Oregon. Kind of that 3, you can put, they would say 4-week stretch, considering you have the off week. That's a very crucial stretch, not only for the season, but I mean, I guess really just for the season, big picture for whatever your postseason aspirations are. A lot can happen in all 3 of those games. I feel like that could really determine where how they're really seen from that national perspective this year.
Yeah, I think going to Iowa and winning is more impressive than beating Illinois at home. I think Illinois is a better team, but going to an environment like Kinnick, if you just beat Illinois, you're 4-0, buzz is starting, you're probably up there in the polls after beating Illinois. Expectations start to really inflate. And Iowa's just always a tough out, man. They're so physical. They're disciplined. It's just not an easy team to play against. And doing it in their building just adds another element. So that's more of a game, like a stepping stone game to the big dogs when you get to Oregon and Penn State. That if I were to circle a couple games on the calendar, it's Oregon, Penn State, and then at Iowa as really the benchmark for where I'm going to see what this team's made of. Illinois is good enough to beat us, no doubt. I don't want this going out and people saying Illinois, whatever. Blah. I'm not saying this is no bad talk about Illinois. They absolutely can come in and beat us. But when you're talking about development of a program, beating a good team at home is much different than beating a good team on the road. So that's a kind of bigger step when you talk about 3 or 4 years down the road.
What was whenever you were back playing, what was the toughest road environment that you remember
Ohio State
playing in? Okay. That might have been an easy question.
Yeah.
Are there any other than kind of Ohio State that stand out, maybe other than Purdue as well, unless Purdue was a horrible environment for you? I know back during your time, Indiana was kind of whooping up on Purdue.
Yeah.
So other than Ohio Stadium, what else was a unique environment to play in?
Penn State's incredible, but we got them. I think we had Danny Cameron starting at quarterback, so it didn't have kind of the same buzz that if Nate Sudfeld was playing, it would have. We were just a little bit slower on offense, but at Iowa is awesome. We had Chris Covington. That's the game that
Wait, he was a linebacker, right?
Chris
quarterback.
Chris Covington started at quarterback for us in that game. So I didn't get the chance to go in at full strength very often in some of these bigger places, but you agree. I know you do agree. Here you go. Let me put you down. There you go. I will say my favorite stadium of all of them, and it has nothing to do with the building or the fans. I'm never surprised when we play really well at Michigan State because of the tempo and style of offense that we play. For whatever reason, the grass there is really good. It sticks. The turf doesn't really come up, and it's weird. All the blades of grass stand straight up, so it's just a really fast surface. If I had to say my favorite stadium, it's probably Michigan State. But at Iowa, it's tricky. It feels like they're right on top of you. Something people probably don't know about Iowa is all the alumni, like most recent alumni, sit right behind the away bench. I was a walk-on nothing, and they were yelling my girlfriend in high school's last name at me. Like they're very informed, and it can take you out of the game pretty quickly, especially when they're good.
Don't they do the pink locker room?
They do.
What's that about?
It's a little duller pink than if you're imagining. It's not like a hot pink,
okay,
but it psychologically it's strange. I can see
you walk in there, I'm sure, and you're aware of it, but it's one of those things that when you walk in, I'm sure it's like, okay, they're trying to get under my skin. I don't think they are, but if things aren't going the way you wanted to, maybe you are thinking it did something to you.
Yeah, I could definitely see how psychologically you had a bad first half. You're running in, thinking about adjustments, whatever. Coach starts yelling at you, and then you look around, and you're like, what am I doing in a pink room? It just, for whatever reason, it wasn't, when you first walk in, you notice it, and then it goes out of your mind. But I could see, or after a loss, you just got beat, and you're sitting in a pink room, disappointed, sad.
Is there anything abnormal that IU does for its away opponents?
I actually don't know the answer to that. I've never been in the visitors' locker room.
Okay.
I don't know why I've never been in there, but I don't know. We need to do more. Whatever we're doing, it's not enough. I'm
excited to see. I don't know if there's any major stadium improvements coming this year, but I know we're not too far away from some major overhaul with Memorial Stadium.
So I played, this is just a teaser. I'm not going to tell you exactly what I heard, but
okay.
Every year we've got a football alumni golf outing where some of the staff comes, old players, just a fun day. And the person I was riding with for the day is there a lot, has a lot of kind of insider knowledge. You would definitely recognize him and probably know his voice. They're talking about some increased capacity, not just suites. We're talking about massive, massive capacity upgrades, which I think is something that has to come. If you're gonna stay on the trajectory you're on, this is something that just crossed my mind. How crazy is it that I'm about to say what I'm just about to say when 2 years ago we were just hoping for one win? But if you're gonna have a program that wins 9 or 10 games, is battling for bigger bowl games, being a more face of the Big Ten and the ever-changing landscape of college football, with how much money there is, you have to have a game day environment that screams to fans, players, and the national media that this is a big deal. When Indiana steps on their home field, this matters. So it's something that they've done a lot of work on. The towels last year were awesome. Now just imagine 20, 30,000 more people, and you can really get that place rocking.
Speaking of, I do see you do have your Signetti towel casually hanging in the background, the ball pit right there.
Didn't even notice that. Didn't even notice that. I'm guessing that. So this is where Laura does all her work during the week. She stays at home with Maggie and works from home. And there are days that I know where it's anything to distract her. Like whatever we have to do, I need to do some work. And we've got all the towels from the games that I went to just in this little corner right next to me. I'm sure she was just throwing those things out. Like, just please give me a second. So that's funny.
What else?
That's there. I didn't even notice.
Oh, it's very.
And it's like right over my shoulder.
Yeah, it's perfectly. It's almost like it knew we were going to be talking about.
I swear I didn't script it.
I would have never guessed that the towel, the historical terrible towel, of course, from the Steelers. I would have never thought that would have been a tradition that would have been adopted with the whole Signetti thing. Obviously, you do have the whole cigarette box design on it that, of course, has gone with Signetti since the moment he was hired at Indiana. But to see Memorial Stadium full for the entire latter half of the season and everybody basically in sync waving the towels around, it's something we'd never seen before, especially in our lifetimes, with Indiana having a competitive and playoff competing football team in an environment like that has never really ever existed in Bloomington.
Yeah, and just imagine what they're going to do this year when they've had an entire offseason to plan. Towels, I mean, if you really think about it, putting out a bunch of towels is probably the cheapest, fastest way to make a cool environment. They probably weren't planning on needing a big-time environment in week 6 of this year. So I think hopefully they stay. They're phenomenal. You've got yours with you.
One here somewhere. I never went to a game. Thankfully, I had a relative of mine go to a game and get me one of these.
First of all, you have to go. That's magic in there.
I'm hoping. Right, I mentioned before, I'm hoping to go up to maybe like the Indiana State game. It's kind of further into the season to where you're not quite, I think it's already mid-September at that point. Hopefully the weather's cooled down a little bit.
September 12th. It's a Friday night.
And may or may not bring the baby along. That's kind of the kicker right now. But haven't been to a game since pre-Signetti, and I don't want that to be the norm during the Signetti era because that would feel like I'm doing myself a disservice, of course.
It's a completely different place. I talked about it a ton last year, but it may not feel like magic as much this year, but the adrenaline that you feel, it's completely different than when I was playing there. I would sometimes run out of games and be almost disappointed. Like, this is it. We worked this hard, and it's, I mean, still 35,000 people, whatever it is, but you really learn to appreciate the diehards back then. Now, welcome all to the bandwagon. Let's all come all. It's a different walking in, even though I'm just a fan. I put the pads on, man. It's crazy.
I know you say you think it won't feel like magic this year, but I do think there's a high level of expectation, again, from the outsiders that thinks Indiana maybe won't necessarily fall off, to like 2-10 like they did in that year with Tom Allen. But I think many are probably thinking Indiana would drop to like maybe a 7 or an 8 win type of season. If you come out guns a-blazing once again, and especially if you get the ball, when you hit that stretch that we talked about earlier, Illinois, Iowa, and Oregon, let's just say you get past Illinois, Iowa, you go into the bye week, and you're about to go on the road to Oregon. That's another one of those program-defining matchups where I'm not expecting Indiana to come out of that on top, but it's that next opportunity to take that step forward if you're eventually going to be among the elite. And I'm sure some people hear that and think it's absolutely ridiculous to think Indiana would ever get to that point. And maybe they won't, but that doesn't mean they won't have the opportunity to do so. And if Indiana gets to that point in the season unscathed once again with another massive opportunity like that against the Ducks, I mean, the magic it'll be feeling similar to how we were last year, even though the results against Ohio State and again at Notre Dame during the playoffs, they didn't necessarily pan out the way that we had hoped they would, but you were still on that stage. And of course, that's a place where the Hoosiers had never been, at least since they were back in the Rose Bowl days.
Yeah, and they'll still be magic, but just maybe not to the level. It felt like every play was magical. It's like, I cannot believe that this is happening to me, to us, to the team that I love the most in the world. I cannot believe this is happening. So I think that will be diminished a little bit where you can believe because you've seen it before.
Yeah, that's fair.
But being able to talk like this is pretty magical too. So maybe, who knows? We'll see when I walk in for the first time. But I love your point about Oregon. It isn't – when you say program defining, that can be misconstrued because I understand the way that you're saying it, right? It's going to give us a really good idea of where we are with the national powers. Oregon's about as good as anybody in the whole country, regardless of conference. And if you can go in there and fight them, because the score was better than the actual game against Ohio State. You had one good drive, and then you just got kind of manhandled, right? Obviously, they won the national championship. That's the best team in the country, but they beat you up pretty good. And Notre Dame, similar. You got beat on the line of scrimmage. You just kind of got pushed around a little bit, particularly on offense. So how do we stack up against a really good D-line or a really good front seven? Are we able to build pockets? Are we able to get first downs on critical third and mediums? Are we able to keep drives going? Can we, when we get in a big situation, can we make a play on special teams? Because that's the difference. You talk about all the superstars, the Jeremiah Smiths of Ohio State, yada, yada, all these amazing, amazing players. But what makes Ohio State is everybody else and how disciplined they are. When a play needs to be made, someone's going to make it. And Indiana had a couple chances to do that last year, really step on Ohio State's throat for a minute. We were taking it to them, and then you make one play, and it just feels like the air's out of the balloon and deflates you. And that's what typically happens to even really good teams against the best teams in the country. So when you go to Oregon, how are you going to handle that environment? How are you going to handle that speed? How are you going to handle that physicality? It's going to tell us a lot about the state of the Hoosiers. It's still year 2. We have a long runway. You can already see it in recruiting. I talked about this a lot last year, where you're not building a program out of the transfer portal. You're building it with high school kids. We're still very early in the Cignetti era. So even if, 9-3 is not what I expect, but even if something like that happens, that's something to build on going forward. And you still have a story to tell to the kids that are going to be in the program for 3-4 years and really bought in. By the time they're seniors, they're as good as they can be. So it's a big opportunity to show Indiana how good Indiana can be.
Last question. Have you pinpointed down, maybe you haven't, and this is also kind of a cliche question, I guess, but have you pinpointed like your exact expectation for this team?
No. I always have a hard time doing record predictions when in my head I'm thinking we might win 2 games and I say we're going to go 12-0. I have a much harder time actually picking games when I think we should win. I don't know if that's like a superstition or whatever it is, but I think the expectation is when you talk about a step forward, I'm thinking about Oregon, I'm thinking about Penn State. I'm expecting them to match up physically. That's my expectation. When you play a bigger or a lesser opponent, opposite of bigger, lesser opponent, to physically dominate even more so than they did last year. Not every game's going to be 70-0 like it was last year. Probably, maybe it will, but I expect in third and fourth quarters Indiana to get better. That's what really good teams do. That's what we did last year to a certain extent. Now you got to do it against the best teams. And that would be my expectation, to make progress withstanding as the game wears on against the bigger, badder teams.
Mitchell Paige, appreciate your time as always. And hopefully, especially once we get into the season, hopefully we'll get to hear from you more often as the season rolls along. And last year was a blast. I hope we can replicate that too as much as we can with just the enjoyment that was the college football season. Never really got to have that if you're an Indiana football fan.
Yeah. I do want to say one thing, John. This is an idea. We can talk about it more off the air, but I would like feedback from your listeners. I won't be able to go to a lot of the away games. Just Maggie makes it tough. She doesn't make it tough. She's not doing anything to make it tough. It's just tough to leave with a 1-year-old.
Yes.
I'm thinking about live streaming some games, and you would definitely be invited just to watch, have people kind of hop in the chat. Let's talk. As the game happens, instead of just doing recaps, I have the most fun interacting with people during the game, talking about why'd we do this, why'd we do that. As you see on Twitter, I'm very active on there, but just throw a stream up, have the game. even if we're not showing the game, but just have it up.
Yeah.
Is that something that people would be interested in, people would tune into? If not, obviously no problem. I can watch it by myself and be just fine. But just want to throw that out there, something I'm thinking about.
Yeah, of course. Leave a comment down below for the away games he's talking about.
Yeah.
You could do it right here on the YouTube channel or do it on the Twitter or Facebook posts if that's something that you think you'd be interested in checking out. And then if, we'll gauge it and we'll see if we can make it work. So not a bad idea, Mr. Paige.
Yeah, if you have suggestions, DM me on Twitter.
There you go. Even more so, even better.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Mitchell, we'll do this again sometime.
I can't wait.
As always, thanks to Mitchell Paige for his time and his wisdom and his opinions. We appreciate having him on the show and one of our biggest regulars once we get into the season. So looking forward to having him back on pretty much every week once we get football season rolling. Now, I do want to transition into a little bit of news and discussion from Indiana basketball. And we'll start with the latest pickup for the 2025-2026 roster, and that is Bosnian center Andre Asimovic. Now, I say that name having not heard anybody else say that name just yet. And I'm not saying nobody else has said it. I've just not heard anyone else say it through, checking out videos or any sort of thing like that. So hopefully it's how you say his name. If not, I'll figure out how to say it. But that makes it 13 out of a potential 15 scholarships available for the Indiana Hoosiers. Looking at the count right now, you've got 6 who will automatically exhaust their eligibility after the end of this upcoming season. Alexis Bailey, Connerway, DeVries, Enright, and Wilkerson. You got 3 juniors with Dorn, Drake, and Miles, 1 sophomore with Harris, and now 3 freshmen with Asimovic, Sisley, and Ristic. I think it's Ristic. So we'll see. I don't know how vital it is to fill all 15 scholarships, especially when you think about nowadays with the amount of depth that you can have just with 10, 11, even 12 players. Those last 3 almost feels like you're getting so far buried into the depth chart that you know how many players are going to find those spots appealing. I know last year I think Indiana filled out their roster with a guy named Dallas James, and he was on scholarship. He was from South Carolina State, but he was not really ever seen as somebody who was going to have a significant impact on the team, and of course that ended up being the case. Really, though, I guess it's for those who maybe they're not more so worried about playing time. Maybe they're looking for the opportunity to play for a big program, maybe make a little bit of that money just because when you have that Indiana name, and I'm sure there's, again, this is me not really knowing, I'm sure there's some sort of automatic amount of money that goes to you just for being on the roster. Maybe I'm totally wrong about that, but if so, that's definitely an appeal to somebody who may be nearing the end of their eligibility and they know that they're not going to make much of an impact anywhere. So why not just try to make a little bit of money and, be kind of a practice player? And that's what somebody like Dallas James was. And I'm sure that's who will likely end up filling these last 2 scholarship spots, if they end up filling them at all. We'll have to wait and see what ends up happening with that. But it wouldn't surprise me if that's the direction that Darren DeVries would end up going when it comes to the scholarships. We've also got the Indiana basketball Puerto Rico trip coming up for the Hoosiers. And I bring this up for a couple of reasons. One, they've announced the game times or the times that these games will tip off. Indiana will participate in 3 different matchups, 2 of them against a team from Serbia known as Mega Superbet. Those will be the second and third games. And then they'll tip things off against, I guess it's just a Puerto Rican team called Universidad de Bayamon. I may have completely butchered that name, and if that's the case, it wouldn't surprise me. But that will get rolling on this upcoming Wednesday, actually, August 6th, 7 p.m. The other 2 games, Saturday, August 9th, also at 7 p.m. That's the first game against Mega Superbet. And then on Monday, August 11th, will be their final game once again against Mega Superbet of Serbia. That game will be at 11 a.m. Eastern. But what's unfortunate about this, unless you're actually attending these games in Puerto Rico, which I'm sure there are some ticket packages somewhere, but Indiana has always been very secretive, if you will, about these types of matchups. Like, for example, back when Mike Woodson took his first team to the Bahamas during the offseason, those games were not live streamed. And I remember, I believe it was the Hoosier Hysterics got in trouble for attempting to live stream the games on Twitter, now known as X, of course. And speaking of, not of the Hysterics, but of the live stream, there will once again not be a live stream for these games. And I know a lot of Indiana fans are very disappointed about that, understandably so. Last year's Louisville team with first-year head coach Pat Kelsey, I believe they also went to Puerto Rico. Might have been the Bahamas. Either way, it doesn't really matter. But they live streamed their games on YouTube. And I don't really know who or what is exactly to blame for not having a live stream of any of these games. But as I mentioned previously, Indiana's always been, and specifically with basketball, it's happened with other sports as well, but with basketball, Indiana's always been extremely secretive about, putting things on tape, having things up for public opinion, if you will, because that's exactly what happens whenever you show any of these games on live stream. You run the risk of, well, again, good risk and bad risk. You could look really good, and I'm sure Indiana will perform well in these matchups just because I'm sure the talent level is not necessarily the greatest. It usually isn't with these types of games for the offseason. So they may look really well, but on the off chance that these teams, that this Indiana team struggles, the last thing that the university and the athletics department want is bad, negative momentum. Is that even a word? Is that an oxymoron? I don't know if that makes sense. Negative press, I guess, might be the best way to say it. Just negative anything. They don't want any negativity going towards the program heading into a brand new head coach's first season. So again, I don't really know who is to blame. I don't know if this is a head coach's decision, an IU media decision, or something other than one of those few things. But I believe that's likely at least part of the reason as to why they're not publicly broadcasting any of these games. I wish they would be more upfront and just, kind of do it anyway. I feel like showing it is more of just a goodwill thing to your fans, right? It gives them the first opportunity to see your brand new team live. And that's exactly what this is. Similar to when Mike Woodson did this. It's a brand new team. There's not a single player on this roster with Darren DeVries that played for the Hoosiers last year. And so, of course, everybody's going to be chomping at the bit whenever we get closer to basketball season, and they'll finally get a chance to see this team in action. So I understand it. It's not, like I said, with the competition not necessarily being what you're going to face during the season, and with the fact that the team, regardless of how well they play, isn't going to reflect what this team will ultimately look like. It's still just a shame that there won't be the ability for fans to kind of check this team out before you actually get to the season. But again, it is a privilege whenever you're able to do that. I don't know how Louisville was able to get away with it last year. I don't think they broadcasted it through their traditional, like, college media network, whatever you want to call that. I think it was through something like exclusively through YouTube, something like that. So I would imagine, I know Indiana has the ability to do things like that, but maybe they're just not, those entities have not been given the green light to do so. So nonetheless, I'm sure the scores and stats will be public after the fact. And I guess if that's the case, and maybe they won't though, but if they are, and Indiana were to have a bad showing like we were just talking about, wouldn't that still get negative press anyway? So maybe, I don't know, again, maybe those games won't be available, but I feel like they were. Again, I feel like I'm just I'm going back and forth on a lot of things here, but Either way, we'll so I guess by the time next week's show releases, we'll at least know the results of 2 of the games, with the final game taking place late Monday morning. But we'll at least know a couple of we'll have a bit of an idea of what went down based on those first 2 games, of course. And then from that point on, at the end of that, we won't know anything. We won't get to see any more of this basketball team until, I mean, I say Midnight Madness, Hoosier Hysteria, whenever that usually takes place in October. I think that's the last couple of years it's coincided with homecoming weekend, which I believe for Indiana football, I think that is with Michigan State this year, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Either way, I don't have it right in front of me right now. But we'll have to wait and see what happens. Could be a very interesting season for Indiana basketball. And I'm so sick of the negative energy that's been surrounding the program the last several years. And I'm hoping, I say several, it's really the last couple of years. The first 2 seasons with Mike Woodson, things were going in the right direction. And then things quickly changed after that. Not dramatically when it comes to results, but an overall attitude toward the program. And I'm looking forward to, hopefully, a change in that as the Darren DeVries era gets underway in Bloomington. All right, a couple more things I do want to hit on, just a few small things. Not a whole lot of more news to dig into today, but we'll get into some more things next week. But a couple of quick hitters as we wrap up here on August 4th, 2025. Indiana Athletics announced their 2025 Hall of Fame class. A couple of notable names. I guess we'll go through all of them. But first up, we got Meredith Dickensheets from rowing 2012 to 2015. You also got Angel, or could be Angel Escobedo from wrestling 2007 to 2010. Mel Grooms from the 1940s with Indiana football, 1944 to 1947. You have Dr. Peggy Martin, field hockey, women's basketball, and softball from 1969 to 1972. Glenn Terry from men's track and field, 1990 to 1993. And then the 2 headliners of this class, I believe. First being Kyle Schwarber from Indiana baseball, 2012 to 2014. Of course, still having a phenomenal career in Major League Baseball. We talked about him a couple of weeks ago in his All-Star game performance with the home run shootout, if you will. But great to see him making the Hall of Fame class. I believe I saw him post on social media that when he got that call from Indiana, that he just had chills or something. Like he was really surprised, caught by surprise to be on this particular Hall of Fame class. So shout out to Kyle Schwarber. Also, Indiana basketball's Cody Zeller from 2012 to 2013. Good to see him once again making headlines. Former Hoosier, of course, a part of not the movement. He wasn't a part of the movement, I believe. It was right before that. But he was a part of that kind of breakthrough season with Tom Crean, of course, with the big regular season win over Kentucky that kind of springboarded Indiana back into national relevancy, even if just for a couple of years. And that was kind of the beginning of the up and down. The rest of Tom Crean's tenure was like really, really good seasons. Things went down a little bit. Things would go back up. Things went down and ultimately ended up not working out. But of course, Cody Zeller was the very first big-time recruit. Maybe no, I say big. Tom Crean got some big-time guys, but some of them didn't always pan out immediately. Like Christian Watford, I believe, was somebody who was believed to be a really good player, but he's somebody who developed over time. Cody Zeller was the first kind of impact guy that you knew was going to be able to step right in and be a difference maker for Indiana basketball. So shout out to Cody Zeller on also being a part of this 2025 Hall of Fame class. Every time I get towards the end of all these episodes, I start to notice my throat kind of giving out. So got to take some sips of water every now and again, especially because we've already recorded with our conversation with Mitchell Paige as well. So a couple of other things. As per last year, we will be tracking in some way, shape, or form men's and women's soccer as well as women's volleyball. Of course, men's soccer, one of the premier programs in all of Indiana athletics. They'll get their preseason started on August 11th, next Monday, Western Michigan. They'll also face Louisville in an exhibition before kicking things off in the regular season on August 21st against number 9 Clemson at Bill Armstrong Stadium. A heck of a way to start the season for men's soccer. Women's soccer also with a pair of exhibitions. They'll get things rolling this Wednesday against Cincinnati at home. They'll also face Notre Dame on August 9th. And then they'll kick off their regular season on Thursday, August 14th against Youngstown State at Bill Armstrong Stadium. And then a little bit further away from now is women's volleyball. They won't get their season rolling, or at least their first thing on here, the schedule, the Cream and Crimson scrimmage. That won't get started until August 23rd. It's a Saturday. And then they'll get their regular season underway on the road. It looks like it's a 3-team event called the Canes Classic. They'll start off facing Miami, Florida, the host of this tournament, of course, down in Coral Gables. And then they'll play a second match against VCU the following day. So that's August 29th and August 30th. Hoping to see good showings from all 3 teams. And of course, we got football not too far behind right after that. So one more thing before we wrap up. I do want to mention a YouTube comment from our regular listener, Mike Shenanigans. Always love hearing from you, Mike. He had a rebuttal, a retort, if you will, to something I had mentioned last week. And he said, as far as the weekend at the lake during the opening or during Labor Day weekend, he says, we have a tradition that the family gets together as basically a send-off to the summer on the lake. His family has a lake house and they do it every year. He'll still be listening or watching the game. So, and that's in response, of course, to me mentioning how Labor Day is a big lake weekend, and that might be an issue when it comes to selling football tickets. And if you're somebody who does have something like a tradition like that, I totally understand. But I think I'm more so, whenever I was making those comments last week, I think I was more or less referring to kind of the college students who I just want. I guess I would rather see them at the game than going and partying at the lake and doing what. But again, they're students. Anybody can do whatever they want. It probably came across as me saying that people should do something a certain way. I didn't mean for it to come off that way, but at the same time, I totally understand that people have their own traditions and certain things like that. But for those who are able to make it to the game, I think, we just want to see a sold out Memorial Stadium, right? That's all we want to see. And I do think since we last chatted about it, I think they have made more headway on single game tickets. So hopefully that continues along in a positive trajectory. So that's going to wrap it up for us today. This has been another episode of In Touch with Indiana Sports. We'll be back again next week. Hopefully to have some new things to talk about as we get ready for another Indiana football season. We'll, of course, react to whatever sort of result we get from Indiana basketball. Hopefully I can have somebody on who is able to kind of maybe give us a little more than just looking at a box score. Maybe we can get a hold of somebody who actually has a chance to see the action over the course of those not even exhibition games, the off-season trip in Puerto Rico. So hopefully we'll have something for you on that. But until then, this has been another edition of In Touch with Indiana Sports, powered by thehoosier.com.